Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions on media production. If you've got questions, you can get them in front of this illustrious panel by hopping into Makana, submitting them. While you're there, you can also vote on the other questions, as well as chat with the other producers. If you're not yet in Makana, you can get your questions into us 24/7 at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. If you're early in the show, we might even get to them today. So let's jump right into those questions. Bill, what do we have?
Gabriel Ung from Malaysia is up first, and he says, I'd like to use a Blackmagic UltraStudio recorder as a Zoom webcam. However, audio from SDI doesn't get passed through unless the desktop media express is open and not minimized. Is there a better way to get it working?
Alex?
I'm curious as to whether you're using a PC or a Mac in that area, because on a Mac, I don't think I've had that problem of it not being available without the desktop. So I'm just not sure. Let us know what operating system you're on to make that actually work. But that would be the thing that I would look at first. I know we've had a mixture of UltraStudios and also let us know which UltraStudio you're using. I know that we've had a wide variety of UltraStudios that have worked fine. Sometimes you get a lot of options, but outside of that, they should work fine as far as being connected. So let us know what operating system you're using and what version of the UltraStudio you're using, and we'll see if we can't figure out why that would be happening. But that does sound like a very unusual behavior from our experience.
Next question.
Alexander Knight comes to us next from Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. Streaming direct to YouTube via ATEM. I noticed it's variable, not constant bitrate. Last time I tried sending more data using Hyperdeck's low setting, YouTube dashboard complained. Is it reliable? And he's trying to squeeze more quality out of his system.
Jason, what do you know?
I've never actually switched to Hyperdeck High for streaming on the ATEM. I've always used the web presenter. And it always worked for me without incident. So I'm kind of at a loss here now that I think about it.
Alex?
Yeah, so you shouldn't use variable. YouTube will complain, and it may have issues with it. And I will say that while the streaming interfaces for Blackmagic are some of the best in the business, the actual encode quality is not. And so if you're really looking at stretching out encode quality, you may want to be looking at a more dedicated encoding solution. There are the black level issues that we've struggled with a little bit in Zoom are in all the encodes that come out of the ATEM or the web presenters. And it's just the way that compression works. And so I would really think about something else to encode your event if you're trying, when you say I'm trying to squeeze quality out, I think that having the ATEM have something that it can do that encode is great. Using it when you start saying I want to squeeze quality out of it, I don't think that the H.264 solutions that Blackmagic are using are perfect right now. So I would think about a couple other dedicated resources to do that.
Next question.
Eric Hertz in Hartford, Connecticut comes up next. If I were to create a network of local TV stations, each run as a Zoom meeting with a local moderator, how could I pull in a national live feed into 1,000 separate Zoom meetings?
Guy?
Yeah, I'd have to get a little more detail on this question to answer it perfectly, but the gist of it, spinning up 1,000 meetings, for one, you would need that many licenses unless it's on their end. Obvio is a company in Australia that can help with that if you need 1,000 meetings. They specialize in people like Tony Robbins are able to handle all these breakout rooms and shifting of people around, but more importantly, they have 1,000 licenses. AWS is a way of spinning up the actual machines without having to go to buying that many computers. So until this is built out and you had to, purchase or own these machines, the other day, Oliver and I were pushing 8 meetings out of one Mac Studio Ultra. That's a $3,999 computer, and we were able to start 8 instances of Mimo Live and have 8 meetings on one machine. So you do the math. I mean, that's a $4,000 computer. So it depends on who's host, what hardware that you need. If you just need to push it out, there's ways of utilizing OBS. You could use SRT and push it to a certain spot where people can pick it up. So then you got egress charges out of AWS if you're going to just send the feed to somebody else via a protocol that's not WebRTC. So you get a little bit more quality and then push it in that way. So I just need to hear a little bit more about who's host, where you want to go and how you want to get there, and what quality level, and Also, is the talent going to be like cued on ears or what's going on? So there's a lot more to this. You'd have to really diagram it out to get a thorough answer.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. And Roscoe asks, if adding converters to your ATEM Mini SDI Inputs, would you buy the ones that use LUTs, lookup tables?
Jason?
Well, yes, because of course I would. But more importantly, I started looking, and I mean, when you scroll down and just search for LUT, almost all the broadcast converters now natively support 3D LUTs. So the short answer is absolutely.
Alex?
100% agree with Jason. There's no way I would buy one without a LUT at this point. And only a couple of years ago, I think probably 2 years ago, we had trouble finding one that had LUTs. So, this has been a hard turn for Blackmagic and many others to make sure that they're incorporating LUTs into those converters. And so there was only one or two one or two Blackmagic converters that allowed you to apply LUTs. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and now they're, as Jason pointed out, they're all there. If you don't need it, I mean, these aren't very expensive converters. If you don't need it, you won't use it, and it'll work just fine. If you need it, you're going to wish that you had it in the hardware. So I would highly recommend getting ones that have a LUT option. Most of them are going to be 33-point LUTs, so they're not super high resolution LUTs, but they're good enough to do most of the correction that you would want to do.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is up next, and here on the panel, a 3-camera with remote NDI and Ethernet Obsbot Tail AIR setup runs about $2,403.28, including taxi notes. Is this the ultimate kit for remote production that bests a similar Insta360 Link setup without NDI or an API?
Paul?
Yeah, Joe, one of the regulars in After Hours, has been building this, and he's been making some remarkable kits. And you need 3 Obsbots, you need 3 cables, you need 3 licenses, you need a little remote device. So my question is, does this compare or vastly exceed the Insta360 subsystem?
Alex?
Well, I think it would depend on, it would depend on a lot of things. Like what software you're actually cutting with. Do you know what he's cutting? Is he actually editing the software with? Because this doesn't have an editing system in it right now.
I don't know.
So
it's a good question to ask.
So I guess the question would be, is it a PC or is it a Mac? Is it those types of things? It also depends on where you want to put the cameras and how you want to interact with them. Ultimate's a big word. so it's, there's a lot of things that you can do for $2,500 that would probably be similar in price. Depends on how many cameras that you're trying to do. Like, for instance, at that price, I could probably get, some smaller Sony cameras and an ATEM Mini and probably cut a pretty good show, that was done, just with wires. So I think that, and that would probably, if you're looking at comparing an Obsbot Tail to, some Sony Super 35 or APS, size sensors, it's going to look like a different show, so it's, so I think that when you're looking at the overall, like, I will flat out say, I enjoy using the for things that are a little bit more clinical, like cooking or like little podcasts and so on and so forth. I like the Insta360 links. I like what they can do for that kind of more clinical streams. As soon as I say I want this stream to look good, I move to Super 35. Period. Like, I don't think about any camera that below a Super 35 sensor. As soon as I say I want the stream to look good, I want a lens on it that's faster than 2.8. I want to have, or at least 2.8 or faster, and I want a Super 35 sensor on it. That's when I say, okay, this is going to look like something I care about. And at this point, we don't know what's going to happen next week, but it looks like we might even get Micro Four Thirds from Logitech. This market is moving very, very quickly, and there's a lot of really inexpensive ways to solve that problem right now and get that quality without spending more than $2,500. So I think, again, I would say ultimate is a big word, and I think that it is. I just will say I've streamed over 2,000 events, and the quality difference between Super 35 and a webcam is, or half-inch chip or third-inch chip or 2/3 inch chip, is dramatic, and it just looks different, and people feel like it's more important, and it actually compresses better as well.
Guy?
Gosh, it's a tough one because, again, ultimate's a big word. It depends on the production. So how far away is what you need to see away from those cameras? Because that's a 4x zoom. And as somebody that was at Microsoft yesterday running some PTZs, and I was at the end of my zoom, and these were $15,000 cameras. I was at the end of my zoom a couple times when they wanted to hit a panelist from head to torso. I couldn't get them, and I had to talk into comms and say, I'm at the end of my zoom. So if you're at a 4x zoom, I can imagine what kind of reach that you could only get and how deprived you would be unless you stuck that camera right in front of somebody, and then is it blocking some other shot? It's a real limitation of those cameras. So you just got to be careful as to what you pitch to the end user and whoever's participating as to what capabilities you have, because that 4x will be a serious limitation really fast. So really, really think about it, because it sounds cheap, but so is not bringing home the bacon, so to speak. So having a show where you don't have a good looking finished product is not a good show. May as well just farm it out.
Paul?
Yeah, I think I get carried away using that superlative, but in terms of controlling a show from remotely, it might be a good solution. But I have to agree with Guy. The 4x is a big limitation. It's good you pointed that out, Guy.
And Alex?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the kind of show too. So I just want to outline, if you're talking about a show, like I tend not to work very much on shows that have audiences, and I tend to, if you give me an audience, I tend to just put the cameras in the front, because I have more viewers than I have. I put them wherever I want to put them, and I make the audience kind of look around it, or I give them an IMAG that they can look up. But I've kind of learned to ignore the audience and just build for the camera. And the reason that I do that is because I generally have, the audiences have changed where it used to be the in-room audience was the big audience and the online audience was the online, was a small audience. It's not the case anymore. And so when we talk to clients, we really talk about, are you building for the 60,000 people watching, or the 30,000 people watching, or the 1,500 or 500 or 150 that are in the room? And they'll be like, well, both. And I'm like, you can't really have both. Like you can have, we talk about long lenses. I will recommend that anybody doing a hybrid event, make sure that you have the data on average view time and in a multi-day event, how many people, you want to look at how many people make it through the day, how many people make it to day 2, 3, and 4, and how long do they watch. And you need that data, because I will tell you that if you measure that data, most people who do hybrid events do not want to look at that data, because it is a really devastating number, and the reason it's devastating is you're trying to do both and you can't. And so when you have a hybrid event, I will continue to say this, it is often, not always, but often worse than no event at all for the online audience. You're better off building another event for the online audience that takes all the same people, lets them join over Zoom or whatever. But a hybrid event can do an enormous amount of damage, because what happens is that people don't get a compelling experience, and trying to get them to come to the next event is very difficult, because they'll be like, oh, and here's the worst part, is they don't complain about your event. They might even tell you had a great event. It's just, and they don't even think it was a bad event. Here's the worst part. You send them a little thing like, how was the event? And they'll give you 4 out of 5 and blah, blah, blah. The next time the event happens, they just won't show up. And they won't think about it like, oh, that was a bad event. They're just busy, and they're busy because it just doesn't matter as much anymore. It doesn't matter that they went to that event, because they didn't matter. like they didn't matter there. And so what happens is that you're dealing with a lower brain problem, and lower brain problems are incredibly hard to pry out. When people feel like when they have this lower, not when they consciously think about it, but when they have this lower brain, like, it's not as important as whatever I have going on today. And it gets filed away in your lower brain. Getting people to come back around again, super, super expensive and hard. And hybrid events create that experience, and they create it in a way that is very hard, because you don't get the data from people of saying it was a bad event. They don't complain about it, but you have a harder and harder time getting people to show up. So you either have to spend an enormous amount of energy on that hybrid event, or build a separate event, that covers the same pieces that are online, that really dedicate, a connection to the online audience. But if you look at the real data, It's a brutal set of numbers that no one really wants to look at because it's a it's hybrid events are not working. No matter what people say, they're just really not working in the long term. So
next question.
Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. is up next. Is the Davinci Resolve H.264 Hyperdeck quick export option the magic formula for playback on any SSD, regardless of the SSD's format or Hyperdeck codec setting? And that's one of our first QR code questions this morning.
Jason?
Oh no, it totally isn't. Not even a little bit. Codec is coder decoder, and hyperdecks get picky about what they're set to be playing and recognizing, and that has nothing to do with the one of the two different ways that you can format an SSD to get it to work for a hyperdeck. So no. Alex?
The most successful one that we've had is actually ProRes 422. So that is the one that we can do ProRes 4 LT. We find that H.264 is the hardest one to actually. It's small and it fits onto smaller cards, but it is probably the hardest one that we've had to do playback from an SSD on a hyperdeck specifically. So if you're talking about some other playback system, there's a lot of other things that can do it. But on a hyperdeck, we find that the H.264s are the least. The least compatible. It's just really difficult to get what you want out of it. The way we manage that is that we have typically an Apple ProRes 422 selection in compressor. Everything goes through it. And because the other thing that has to happen is not only do you have to get the codec correct, but you also have to have the codec needs to be exactly the same. And I mean, you can have two things that say ProRes 422 and they won't the second one won't play. So you have to run it through. What we find is that, again, there's people will probably have other solutions for this, but I can tell you the thing that works after having these since they were released is you have a setting in compressor or some other compressing software. It's completely templatized. There's nothing you can change, and you just drag things onto it. Even if they say they're the same codec, you just drag them on. They all come out and they all work. And that's the easiest way to make this work.
Bill?
I just wanted to put a note in that Mickey added into the Mukana chat. He says, nope, an H.264 encodes from Resolve can look really bad. He has ProRes 444 and ProRes HQ presets in media encoder that reliably work. An important thing is to make sure all assets in the media are of the same codec, the resolution, and frame rate if you want to succeed at this.
And Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with all those advices as long as you're playing back on a hyperdeck. Part of the question that threw me was any SSD, and I was wondering if you meant, removable to play back on some other system other than the hyperdeck. And if that's the case, you would probably choose something like, encode it for upload to YouTube as an H.264. That'll be your most portable format. Although the H.264 encoder in Resolve is not too good. I do it in another device, such as Handbrake or, whatever converter is on your platform that does a good H.264 encode as an MP4. But if you're talking about playing back on hyperdeck, all the previous suggestions apply.
Next question.
Eric Hertz in Hartford, Connecticut up next. How can I pre-roll a 1-minute video ad to each person before they join my Zoom meeting?
Alex?
I think this is actually a feature. I've not done this because as a user, I would hate it. I would be really upset if someone gave me, I can tell you as a user, if someone gave me a 1-minute thing that I had to watch before I could enter, I don't know if I would make it to the other end. So that's the only thing that I would warn you about. I'm not a big person that stands in lines, and definitely do not like anything that stops me from moving the playhead or anything that stops me from getting in because you want to show me something. I usually will decide that this is not a product or a brand that I want to interact with, and I will turn it off. So and I'll just walk away. So I may be atypical. You may be able to get people to sit through that, but I don't know how many. I think the events platform may have tools that you're looking for to do this, where you can have them play Now, if you're doing something that's really interesting for a minute before I get in, or tells me how to do something or whatever, but man, I would. This is fissionable material when it comes to keeping the. I was talking to someone who is in the big business world. They're dealing with tens of millions of dollars, and I was talking about Mukana and as a Q&A system, and he goes, "It's not an app, is it?" like Slido. He's like, I have to deal with that every day. And he goes, nobody downloads that app. he's like nobody, like if Slido's in the event, he goes, we're pretty sure that there aren't going to be any questions because no one's going to put that on their phone. And what I mean by that is that the friction, when you add friction to the entry point, you're really dealing with some dangerous things, as far as if you want audience interaction, if you want people to show up. You just want to be really thinking about what you're doing there, because I think that it's a dangerous path.
Paul?
Yeah, I think if you want to avoid the forced march to the sea scenario that Alex is talking about, just send them to a breakout room and have the ad running in a loop in a breakout room, and they can decide if they want to slog through it or not.
That's good. That's a good idea.
Guy?
Yeah, for Zoom waiting rooms, you have a 30 megabyte looping video that you can throw in the front end. So before they come into the meeting, you can put that 30 megabyte limited video in there. So I'm not sure about the actual duration, whether you could just make that, not so great quality and have it loop depending on if it's a 5-minute video or a 30-second spot. Once they're in, that's a different story. Like Paul said, a breakout room would probably be appropriate. And again, this is where Obvio can come in handy, where they can move and shift people around, but they can also tag people. So they can tag a person that's already seen or visited the breakout room, or maybe you just create a series of steps, like force, if it's a lot of people, push them all in. Once they've viewed or sat in there for a little while, the jail, and then move them over to the next breakout room once they've viewed the appropriate content. So there's a couple options there. And then you could, if it is just in the regular Zoom meeting, you could just use OBS or MIDI. There's a variety of different playout systems if you just wanted to play out something in front of everybody and just use that as a source and spotlight it. And there's some tools like Zoom OSC that will allow you to quickly do that.
Alex?
In general, I'd be very careful to play out into meetings most of the time as far as video goes. Think about, a minute that you're listing is near the outer edge of what will play out in a video. As examples, we'll want to break it up with discussion or other things like that. We just noticed that behaviors very quickly move away from your event. Like when you play a video, people start checking their email, they start doing other things. There's the behavior very quickly is they just disengage, and they're just waiting for it to end. So you just have to be very careful. If you have something really, really compelling that is got a contextual conversation wrapped around it before and after, you do a much better job. But you should not assume that everyone's actually watching it, because usually they use the opportunity for a video to go do something else, and so and that may be still on their screen or whatever. But I think that we've definitely over the last 4 or 5 years slowly moved away from playing videos at all if we can avoid it. We'll play little ones and little sections that are under. They're part of the conversation. Like, let me show you an example of something, or let me show you this. But very rarely will we stick people with watching 3 or 4 minutes of video, because the behavior, as we've talked to people afterwards on some of these events, the behavior is pretty much they go do something else, and so they'll stick around and listen to a conversation. They won't the video play out, and this is where I think that the flipping, quote unquote, flipping the event, like flipping the classroom, of delivering lots of video that people can watch before they get to the conversation is a really effective way to, let a certain percentage of people that are really into it go ahead and watch it, and they will improve the conversation of the event because they saw those videos. And so I think that you want to think about how to get those out early. Like, this is really good prep, but be very careful with this. The other thing is that when you play things into a WebRTC system, whether it's Zoom or Teams or anything else, look at your video and note that there are a lot of transitions, a lot of cuts, a lot of camera moves that do not look good on WebRTC because of the nature of WebRTC coming in at real time. So a lot of people build these great videos that look gorgeous, and they've got all this motion graphics and things sweeping back and forth and all the things that look good on their home computer. And when you push it through Zoom, you always, like what we do when we're working with a client, they say, oh, we've got a bunch of video assets that we want to show. We literally sit down with the client and play every asset back through Zoom. Like, okay, I want you to see what it looks like going through Zoom. And and when you see some breakup, then people have to go back to the drawing board and rebuild those to make sure that they're there. So we want to make sure that everybody approves what they did, because otherwise you end up with a client afterwards going, well, what happened to the video? And we're like, well, it's WebRTC. Like that's what happened to the video. So there were tools like Blue. What was the blue one? I can't think of the name of it right now. But there was I want to say Blue Apron, but that's sending you food. But there was another meeting app platform that would actually take all the videos and download them to everyone's computers and then play it back. And that actually worked pretty well and that was really designed for the entertainment industry. So we saw it a lot in the entertainment industry.
Blue Jeans.
Show a trailer. Sorry?
Blue Jeans, maybe?
Blue Jeans, that's it, yeah.
Sorry, it just came
They're
to
gone. I think they were bought by Verizon and then buried. And so anyway, I think Verizon really wanted it to work. And there was nothing else that worked very well about Blue Jeans other than that one feature. So that kept them going for a little while, but wasn't enough. So anyway, but I think that local playout is successful, but you really have to be careful of playing videos through a WebRTC system and understand what's going to happen to them as they go through. Any kind of slow pans, slow video pans will get jagged. So will sweeps, a lot of those types of things. High movement, a lot of editing, a lot of pixels changing at one time is not your friend when it comes to WebRTC.
Next question.
Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California is up next, and he notes Meta is shutting down CrowdTangle, which was used by media outlets to track trending content on Facebook and Instagram. He has a link at the bottom of this to the article talking about this and wonders, was this to stop criticism of how their algorithms work?
Alex?
Well, if you have a product that isn't generating very much revenue, but is generating a lot of controversy, why would you keep running it? As a company, I mean, I don't know if it's there to stop it. It's not like it happened suddenly. They've been shutting this thing down for 3 or 4 years. So they bought it, I think, back in, I want to say 2015. They've had it for a while, and it has been the source of 2015, 2018, somewhere in that range. But since 2021, they've been on a process of shutting this thing down. So I don't think that there's any. I think they just decided it wasn't a particularly good investment. I don't think there's a lot of conspiracy here. If I made a product that was generating a lot of controversy and not a lot of revenue, I'd get rid of it too. Just not worth. Why would you spend money on that? So I think that's probably they're just doing the math.
Courtney?
Yeah, I think I don't think it's to keep people from criticizing it. I think it's to control access to it. They're shutting it down. They are going to replace it with something of their own later with limited access. And this free access, I think they're trying to prevent other social media networks from scraping the information off that and tuning their own algorithms to match it so that they capitalize on whatever, so they can kind of scrape the results of the Facebook algorithm and stick in hashtags or whatever guiding SEO tags that will guide their own social media networks in the same direction, so to kind of capitalize on what's popular on Instagram and Facebook. So maybe now this new version that they're going to roll out later this year is going to have limited access, so they know exactly who is accessing this data, and so they can keep the scrapers out of there.
Next question.
Next question comes from John Preto in Las Vegas, whom we miss on this panel. Alex, I watch you draw on your telestrator over your video. Why not make a picture-in-picture with a drawing box and a video box?
Alex?
I don't really like picture-in-pictures, so that's why I don't do it. So I don't like. I feel like oftentimes if we use a picture-in-picture video, it feels less broadcasty and more like corporate. And I tend to be as someone who has spent thousands of hours streaming pips. When people are doing presentations, I've grown to dislike them a great deal, and so I feel like just cut back and forth. If you want to do that or draw over it. I have to admit that I really like the virtual thing. I have thought about it a little bit where I may increase the blur or shorten the depth of field on what you're looking at here, specifically so that my pen looks better over top of it. But I think that if I'm drawing something here like this, like the blue doesn't work as well. But if I get something else that's out there and I'm drawing like something that's going to be here, I feel like I like the look of it floating over top of that. I even like it if I'm drawing something that is going across here and I'm doing. I kind of like the glass the glass painting thing that happens in front of it. I think it's mostly a choice. I don't think that there's a strong you must do one way or the other. I just find it to be a little bit more interactive. I also have in my presentations a lot of times I have graphics popping up over top of me, because I think I like changing it up a little bit for the viewer. So I feel like it feels more interactive that way. That's why I do it. I can oftentimes, if I feel like I'm going to do something really complex, I may do this in the second hour. I will cut to the black screen and then just start drawing here. So this is another another process that I might do there, and then come back to what I'm doing. So I have the choice to do those things. And again, I'm not a big fan of pips. That's why I don't do it.
And for more drawing over a black screen and just in general, if you're interested in what we're doing to cover NAB this year, that is coming up at the top of the hour. So be sure to get your questions in for that.
And you will see so many drawings over black screens because I was trying to do something. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to show something that I can draw really easily in Keynote, and you're just going to see me draw it because I was like, I don't know how to do this. So.
Well, we're really excited to hear all about it, and you can get your questions in for it at in Makana or at askofficehours.global. Also, if you have general questions, feel free to throw them in. If we don't get to them today, we will get to them another day. So we're always happy to hear your questions. Next one, please, Bill.
Is from no less than Alex Lindsay of Nevada, California. And the question is, actually the comment, and there's a link to an Ars Technica audio called article that says FCC scraps old speed benchmark, says broadband should be at least 100 megabits per second. And Alex says FCC moves the broadband goalposts. Discuss.
Cochran, Alex.
I know. I did. I threw my own Cochran here, and while Guy's here, so he'll have to rate my quality of Cochran. Anyway, yeah. So I score. I think this is a great move. I think this is a minimum move. But I think that it makes sense within all the compromises that the FCC has of defining broadband. I wish that they legally said that you can't say that you have broadband unless you have these numbers. I don't know if they're going to do that. I think that they're just define what we're going to bring broadband out to the world, or we're going to pay for things. Them defining that broadband as 100 megs down and 20 megs up is much less crazy. Not great, but much less crazy than the 25 down, 3 up that it was yesterday, which is absolutely bonkers. Like the fact that we went, and they defined that in 2015. It didn't really even make that much sense in 2015, but it definitely lasted too long. So making that definition, I think, makes a huge difference in kind of moving that bar up, because 20 megs a second is 2 people on Zoom at home. And I think I think they had to think about it for a little while after COVID, and 100 megs a second is a reasonable number to have at home. So I think that's great. I do think that from a marketing perspective, people should not be able to define their internet. I think if it's not up to what the FCC broadband statement is, they should not be able to say broadband. Like they should say, we can offer you fiber or internet or whatever, but they should not be able to say broadband. In fact, I think that we should think about lawsuits, of pushing them to go forward, because I really think that we should push the minimum that people should be getting at home now is 100 down and 20 up.
And Courtney?
Yeah, I think these original numbers, that was 25 and 3 down and up, where it was 2015, was established more when they were trying to limit broadband over the air to telephone, using the cell phone networks and point-to-point internet. But now that almost everybody gets their television, over streaming, a lot of people, as opposed to broadcast, that's just not going to do, because if you have 4 people in a house trying to watch, 4K in 4 different rooms, you're going to exceed that very quickly. They did say that their long-term goal is a gigabyte down and 500 up. So if we can get to that, the sooner we get to that, the better. That's their long-term goal.
And Guy?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you read the PDF, the attached FCC document, and you look at the numbers of people that are out there that don't have 5G and terrestrial broadband service, and it makes you wonder, like, where are these people living, and how hard is it going to be to get federal funding to get close to them? There's DSL out there. There's people that'll do like these Airfiber things where they'll shoot from a mountaintop to somebody's property. Like, where does the government step in and help out? Because I'm fortunate to live in a newer neighborhood by I-5, which is the main thoroughfare through here. So I was shocked last month when I went to get an upgrade because, like Courtney was saying, I had 5 users in here, and all of a sudden the kids watching 4K videos were hogging. I could look in my Dream Machine and I could see that they were taking 11 megabits per 4K stream. So it was saturating my bandwidth pretty quick. And here in a modern,
it only 11 per what
11 megabit on this LG TV that my granddaughter was watching on. I was like, geez, because all of a sudden my splash top started saying internet unstable, and I was like, no way. And so with the Dream Machine, you can actually force people over to your secondary connection. So I can granularly say, you Xbox user, and you Oculus Quest grandkid, you're going over to my Comcast backup system because you're interfering with my primary. So it's cool when you have these tools that you can see what you're taking up. But the neat thing about living in a and I'm spoiled now by it, living in a modern neighborhood is that the fiber run, the guy installing last month said you could get 50 gigabit to your house. I was like, how's that even possible? And he's like, yeah, they just run the line right to your house. He was putting in 1 gigabit, and he wound up putting in a 5 gigabit connection for $130 a month. So I have 5 gig here, fiber to my house, and the Comcast will only do 1 gig down and 50 up. So I feel sorry for the folks that are stuck in that cable infrastructure, because you're not going to get much over that. With copper, you could only get so much, and same with fiber, but fiber is just so much more, it's got so much more bandwidth and capability that in a neighborhood like this with 160 houses, they're like, yeah, you all could have 50 gigabit. I'm like, what? It's just bonkers in my mind. But John Preto actually put up an article yesterday. They're going to 400 gigabits per second over at Dropbox. Their infrastructure, their switches are 400 gigabit. So they're talking about, in the future with AI and people being able to, look at each other through these high bandwidth connections. The future is exciting. That's all I can say.
Well, and thank you all for coming full circle. I was reading the paper on Monday and saw a big article. Comcast Xfinity just made your internet faster at no extra cost. And then you read the way that they bump the speeds. It's like, oh, you didn't want to lose your ability to call it broadband. Ha, ha, ha. Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas, poses this one. What large consumer TV available in places like Amazon, Best Buy, Walmart, and so forth makes the best computer monitor that has the most useful and versatile user interface and features for office hours type use?
Paul?
Yeah, sorry about the superlative again. I was at the South by Creative Show, the Creative Technology show they just had, and I noticed at the Blackmagic booth that they were using all Samsung monitors. I didn't get the model number. I should have. I made a video of it, so I may be able to go back and see what monitor that was. But leave the superlative out, okay? And you can address it without that.
Sure thing, Alex.
What's the big? What were the size? About 55 inches.
Yeah, they were about 55. They had 3 of them at the Blackmagic booth.
Yeah, I will say that the Samsung 55-inch is a real sweet spot from a cost-performance perspective. I probably owned, 20 of them, 20 or 30 of them. That was our standard operating monitor. I don't know which one they had there, but they're about $400 or $500. They're 55 inches. They look good. They are durable. So again, I don't know exactly which model, but we definitely, the 55-inch, once we go over that, we stop using Samsung, because if we care about things like HDR, we want to have Dolby Vision, and Samsung wants to do HDR 10 Plus or HDR 10, which is HDR 10 Plus is we don't want to pay for Dolby. And Samsung has kind of gone down that path. So we stopped buying Samsung monitors at about 55 inches, but we buy a lot of them. So there's a lot of things we spend under $100 on, like lots of little weird monitors that we buy. At the 100 to 400 or 450 range, that we buy a lot of Lilliput's, and these are just dumb monitors. I'm not talking about recorders or whatever. Buy a lot of Lilliput's and Dells. So that tends to fill that space in between for a variety of reasons. The Lilliput's give us little portable monitors, and the Dells, when I say we buy them, I just bought one. so it's still in the box. It just showed up. Yes. I needed another Dell, and that one's like $120. It's 1080p. I'm not trying to do anything else. I keep everything at 1080p because my switcher is 1080p. So anyway, once we want 4K, so 4K, 55 inches, solid monitor. That $400 to $600 range is all Samsung, and then after that we move into a whole variety depending on what we need. Oftentimes LG after that. So,
Bill?
Yeah, for me, the biggest hassle was trying to use a consumer TV, and you specify what large consumer TV available in places like Best Buy. It's just getting the GAC off of it. So much now is being supported by things like Netflix and the rest of these things that want to be built into the TVs for standard consumer use at home that I found over and over again when I first had my new living room TV, that getting around that stuff, making sure that I could never accidentally invoke the Netflix on the TV as opposed to the one coming through my Apple TV that I wanted to source, I wanted to go back to what Alex is talking about, which is to have a monitor that can be cleaned off and just acts as a display without all of this back-end supported content distribution stuff that makes them money on the back end selling the TVs. It's been hard to find that. I'm really glad I have an old TV that doesn't even have a computer connection sitting over me now. It's still a beautiful Trinitron picture after I've had it for 15 or 20 years, and I don't have to mess with any of that menu mess.
Courtney?
Yeah, I like the Samsung, the QLED mini LED backlights. I'd be careful about the OLEDs, LG's OLEDs, because if you're going to be using them as a computer monitor where you may have one interface like a title bar or top of the screen or something, you can get burn in. And that's not good on an OLED. But the QLEDs don't suffer from that problem. And the local area dimming of the mini LED versions of the Samsung's, the Q95, I think, series, is really bright, has a lot of nits, has a lot of brightness. You can get like LG 43-inch class 4K UHD screens for about $260 at Target. So that's another possibility. And if you're using them as a computer monitor, just use the HDMI inputs and don't use any of the streaming inputs. Use something else as your streaming interface device. Do not use the internal apps that come in the TV to do streaming. If you're going to use Netflix or if it has a built-in browser, never use the built-in browser in a television set because it's just bare minimum. And you'll have a lot of trouble with just trying to find stuff that they generally don't work very well at all. But use an external, like either a Fire TV or an Apple TV or a Fire TV stick, Apple TV stick, or a Google Home, Google video stick that supports its own interface into it, Chromecast.
Alex?
And we're talking about features. I would echo Courtney's. I don't use any features in a TV ever. Like there's no feature there on the inside of the TV that I care about. I don't want to use any of this stuff. Everything is really painfully underpowered. You talk to anyone who does what I do, everything is the circuitry inside the TVs is just trash, all of them. And so it's just not worth, you got to really think of quality of life in your own time as part of the equation when you decide what you're going to get. There are a couple features of these Dells that keep me buying them. They're not the best monitors in the world. Again, this is a $120 monitor, but it's 24-inch. It has bezels. I actually buy them with I have one here without bezels. I tend to like bezels. The reason is I put stickers on them. I have stickers of which ID this is in my router and which, there's other things I put on them so I want the bezel. I don't want to get rid of the bezel. The ones that I have like 2 or 3 here that without any bezels, and I find them to be a bit annoying. So I really like the bezels there. It's got a Visa mount on the back. Visa mount. I will not buy a monitor without a Visa mount because I don't usually even know where the stand went. All my monitors get attached to an arm. I don't really attach stuff like that. The biggest problem I have is if I have to put a monitor down, I have to figure out what happened. I'm trying to give like a box where I just throw all the stands somewhere so I can actually find them if I actually need them. And then down below, the other thing that I pay a lot of attention to is I want a regular. It's going to be hard to show here, but this is a standard 3-prong. It is an IEC C13 cable. Takes an IEC C13 cable. I will not buy a monitor that has an adapter. Like if it has an external power supply or does anything other than the standard 3-prong, I will not buy it. And this is what I look at when I'm at Amazon. And then finally, I make sure that it has an HDMI. Some of them don't. They'll have display ports only, or they'll have some wonky thing. But so this one has one HDMI, which is all I need. It has the VESA mount, the power, the bezel. And the added bonus is I like the buttons on the bottom. So this one has buttons on the bottom of it, not on the back. I find the ones on the back to be a pain in the neck to figure out what I'm doing there. It's easier to get to them. I have a lot of monitors, and so I think about like little things like that, just a little extra work, especially when they're all clumped together. Reaching through them because they're all swung together. I end up having to walk around to get to them if they're not underneath there, if they're in the back. So those are things that I pay attention to when I'm actually buying monitors.
And Paul.
Yeah, I posted a picture in after hours of a monitor they were using at the booth. So if anybody wants to look in after hours, maybe they can help me identify what monitor that is. Thank you.
Next question.
Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas is up next. Has anyone created a script, StreamDeck button, or so forth for enabling original sound on Zoom meetings? I'd love to set up an automation.
Courtney.
I haven't not done this yet, but you got to be careful of anything that, like the button on the top of the screen here in our Zoom meetings, which toggles original sound on and off, is a toggle. So you got to make sure that if you're using a keystroke that is used as a toggle, to toggle it on and toggle it off, the same keystroke turns it on as turns it off. You got to be able to check the state of the current state before you toggle it, obviously. Otherwise, it can get out of phase and not work correctly. Or it's got to have discrete controls to turn it on and a different control to turn it off. So make sure it has two separate controls to do that if you're going to transcript that kind of thing. Toggles, be aware of that. That's why our mute through using the StreamDeck is sometimes dicey, because it's sometimes using the keyboard toggle, which you don't necessarily know the state of it before you click it.
Jason?
Oh boy, I went all the way down the rabbit hole on this one, and we have it on good authority that like Zoom is actively ignoring this because they don't want people to do it by accident. You know, for every one person that would kill for this, there are 10,000 people who will end up creating feedback and like really kind of tarnishing the brand. But there was a couple days ago. There's the QR code for the URL. Somebody decided to mess with their Windows registry to like actually get it to do this. And it's not a toggle, it's just a default to on. Haven't tested this, wouldn't do this myself, but it was the closest that I could find to like, an actual way to programmatically do this. I think they're staying away from this on purpose.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Scott Hancock in Tokyo. And Scott says, is there a decent way to get analog audio out of the USB-C iPad for inputting into a mixer? The basic Apple USB-C to 3.5 millimeter jack seems to only work with headphones.
Jason?
There are any USB-C class compliant sound card will work. The issue becomes, can you get line level out, or can you get a known, predictable level out without, destroying the battery of your iPad? And of course, it can be powered too. I would say that the IK Multimedia iRig HD2 will do it. I don't love Focusrite, so I'd be a little bit skeptical about that. This one seems to be pretty reliable. So yeah, $100 IK Multimedia, and they're, my crazy way of doing it is Dante, but yeah, a little bit over the top.
Guy?
Yeah, I like Jason's crazy way of doing it with Dante, with the Bluetooth adapter. That's one way that's fast and easy, just because you don't have a wire. The way that I haven't got this device yet, but it's on my shopping list. It's called the Synex SoundWire, and this is a USB-C to XLR adapter. The conversion's happening inside of a high-quality DAC, and it's 192 kilohertz, 32-bit audio with that device. There is also some headphone adapters by Dragonfly that are super high quality. They're expensive though, and those are more for the audio files. I used to own one of those as well. They're about $200 to convert to 3.5 millimeter. But the Synex SoundWire is the go-to for guys that are doing this for big gigs and want the highest quality sound. But they're pricey, $165 for a little cable.
Alex?
So you didn't say price. So I just want to say, you didn't say how much can I get for $50? There's a couple different options. One that I'm looking at getting for what I'm doing is the radial. This is the USB Pre 2 active. This is a direct box. Hold on, let me see there. Radial makes a USB to XLR, and I think I grabbed the wrong one here to show you. It might be there. So anyway, I'll show you what this is. This is the one I'm looking at getting. I don't have it yet. And this is based on a recommendation by Mickey. So this is USB. It's a USB to a DI box, and is this the right one? Let me see if I can get the output here. It doesn't show me the back end of it. So so this is XLR out with a USB in. This is going to be a little bit more expensive, $279. Now, what I use, and I used to own 60 of them, and I now I'm down to 1 or 2. Is this is what I use to get out of my computer. So it's a Sound Devices USB Pre 2. It is built like a tank. It is $1,000 now. It used to be, I think when I bought it, it was $650 or $700. It's gotten more expensive. But it is, so the big thing is there's no software to it. It is all dip switches on the back. If you look at it here, I was trying to find one to show it to you, but you have dip switches on the back. It is low level. It produces solid audio. You definitely want something that is going to go from your USB to a balanced audio output. So you're looking for an XLR or TRS, but it has to be a balanced audio output. And I think that to get that you're going to look at the reason that I would tend to lean towards these over a straight wire like Guy showed. I think that I am interested in buying that one to have in my kit because I just want to have something laying around. But not having any kind of output control would probably not something I'd put into a production. So it'd be something I put, like what Guy showed, is something I would use as in my Crikey case of I've got a cable that will do the thing. I don't think I would always want to have a little bit more control over what I'm doing if I'm putting it into production. We use I used to have 4 or 5 of these USB Pre's in our case, and if I heard a buzz behind stage, I would wander over to find somebody using one of those headphone to DI boxes, pod boxes or whatever, and I just pull it out, put this in. I was like, hey, you got to switch this out, and the buzz would always go away. So definitely look for a balanced output from USB. Courtney?
And if you don't want to go the expensive route, the cheap route, I've had this problem before with if your mixer has a high impedance input, in other words, like RCA jacks. I've had this problem with a lot of USB to 3.5 millimeter adapters is because they're designed to work with microphone in and a headphone out on the same 3.5. And they provide a 5-volt bias voltage for that microphone, which interferes with the leads because they're a TRRS really inside there. And if you just use a TRS to get just the audio out, like to a pair of headphones, won't matter. But if you're going into an audio input, that 5 volts that is sitting across the ground on those TRS outputs is a problem. So what I've used, I've replaced, I've disappeared. No, wait. These from the Sabrent for $10 separates, it's USB-C compliant, no drivers needed, and the output has both separate microphone and analog audio output. And that will not give you the 5 volts on the analog audio output, the green one there. So that one works quite well without generating a lot of noise. And if you use the ones that come with a single output, they're going to have DC on them, which is going to be noisy. But these, I recently hooked up a friend's computer with one of these. We had all kinds of noise on the problem with the going into a stereo amplifier, high impedance input on a stereo amplifier. Replaced it with this Sabrent, and it sounds completely quiet. There's not a lot of problem. And he's running through about a 20-foot unbalanced cable, which I do not recommend. I would say use a less than a 3-foot cable or less to connect to your mixer from this particular adapter.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next, and he asks this. For the Oscars segment with Billie Eilish, would Drew Thornton, Billie's front-of-house engineer, have brought his FOH system and patched it in? Drew uses a Waves primary source expander to get her weak voice over the tracks and crowd noise.
Alex?
I don't know the actual answer for fact. I would say it's highly, highly unlikely that they would have somebody else bring their own system in to tie into the Oscar system. I think it would be much more likely they'd work very closely with him. They would get whatever they needed at whatever price to make sure that she's taken care of. They'd make sure that, so I think that's probably how they would approach that. I think that he would be probably in every meeting. He'd be listening to everything that they're doing, but they're not going to have another onboard mixer as part of their show. That's my guess. And most of the companies we've worked with, they work very closely with the artist, but usually it's one board. I know we were working with one that happened in the holidays, so it's not as big as the Oscars, but it's a pretty big concert, and they were. We asked them, like, are people bringing their own mixers? And they were like, no. We're working with them. We'll work with them and they can figure it out. But he said, but we're running this. This is a broadcast. This is a show. We need to control it. So I think the Oscars which is about 10 times or more bigger than that, would probably do the same thing.
And for what it's worth, there were some of the audio during the Oscars kind of made you cringe a little bit. But Billie Eilish's performance was for how delicate her voice is. They did a tremendous job emoting that.
I would say it's one of the best performances in the last decade. Like, it was just really, really well done.
Next question.
Roland Booth is up from Jamaica, and Roland says, Alex says hybrid events are not working. What can we do to make them work, or should we just abandon them? Do we know your opinion, Alex?
Eventually they'll be abandoned. I think that they'll, if you look at broadcast is this world. How often do you see a hybrid event in broadcast? So as the numbers get bigger, you stop wanting to have people messing it up. So as the event numbers get larger and larger online, which they are continuing to go up and up and up and up and up, because more and more people are becoming more and more resistant to moving or to going to these events. There's a handful of people. Again, it breaks up. What we've seen so far is that it breaks up into 30, 30, 30. There's 30 people that absolutely want to go to events, and they run most of the event teams because they were in their social committee when they were in high school, and and that's how they ended up in events. So the extroverts all really, really want this to happen, and so they keep on pushing that down that path. There's about 30% that just don't care. They're like, I'll go or I won't go. It's convenient or it's not convenient. And there's 30% that really don't want to go. And they were forced to go before, and now they're not, and now they won't go. And so that seems to be the cross section in a very rough manner. So I think that is. So I think that you're going to see these online events get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they are absolutely better when they don't have an in-room component. So the online events get better and better when they're not. That you can customize them for folks. They feel more personal. They feel more connected. People do not feel like it's a better event because they were watching it online and there was 1,000 people in the room. Like that does not translate to, this was better than it would have been if someone was sitting in a studio talking directly to me. That's absurd. So the thing is it's a compromise that people make because event people really want the events to come back to physical. And so they keep on wanting to have these happen. So there is a rebound, but it's not necessarily driven by the user wanting to do that. It's really driven by the event people not wanting to. They want a physical event, and the companies want a physical event, but they don't want to do another event for the online folks. They just want to pack them in, and they get big numbers. But again, wow, when you look at the average view times, and even when people say there's real numbers like hundreds of thousands of viewers, usually they're buying those viewers and they're using display ads to do that. And oftentimes the average view time is less than 3 seconds. So when you see really big numbers, you're seeing average view times in micro average view times across those. Those are really good cumes, but it's kind of a drug that people start taking. The drug that companies take is this buying viewers, and there's a bunch of different companies that will do this for you. And they'll buy these huge numbers, and those numbers though are so worthless. It is such empty calories, and so I think that if people actually looked at results, they'd probably start going, "Oh, we should build." I'm not saying that we shouldn't do physical events. I'm saying hybrid events aren't working. I think there's a reason to bring people into the room. There's a reason to shake hands and do things. there's also a reason to do something that's fully online. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. And I will jump out because it's time for CJ to do some announcements.
And if you enjoy what we're doing here on Office Hours and think, hey, I'd like to be a part of that, tomorrow after our weekend Q&A session at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, we do have our new Office Hours volunteer meeting. So if you're interested in finding out what places you can contribute and what opportunities are there, not only in front of the camera here on the panel or as a host or a reader, but also, and more importantly, on the back end, supporting not only our live show, but also async. There's spots for you. We'll see you on the other hour. And welcome. We are going to talk today about our NAB coverage. So we have a booth, we have some internet, we've got some cameras, we've got a crew. We're going to be on site in Vegas, and I know that we're very excited to be bringing that event to people all around the world who can't be there in person. I've been fortunate enough to attend some of the meetings to hear about the planning, and I think I'm going to sneak in there on Saturday because this just looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Alex, do you want to talk a little bit about how we're covering?
Yeah. So pretty excited. By the way, if you're watching here, I'll put the graphic up a little bit later. I just got this. This is like hot off the presses, like an hour ago or whatever. So I was like, where's my code to make sure that people can go? If you want to go to NAB, and I would highly recommend, if you can get to Vegas and go to NAB, we are not a replacement for being at the expo. Like the expo is kind of a lot of fun. And if there's any way that you can make it there, I would highly recommend that you think about going. And I got a code that you can get in for free for the expo, not for the classes and everything else. But I'll be honest with you, all I do is go to the class. All I go is the expo. So anyway, I don't know if I've maybe been to one class or two classes ever, and I speak there. MP07. That's MP07. Maybe that's Mama Papa 07 is the code, and you should be able to get people can check it, and then we'll put it into the thing. But that should get you a free expo pass if you actually want to go to NAB. Again, NAB is to give you a little bit of background, it's the largest broadcast event of the year. There are other great ones. IBC, there's one in Asia, there's a couple, there's one in Africa, Middle East. So there's a variety of ones there, but the biggest one, the one that moves, that has the biggest meetings, that has the biggest, expos, that has, all of those things is NAB. And so we're really excited to actually have a booth, which we'll show you in a second. And then we put together quite a collection of people to be able to put this on. It's definitely our biggest group of people right now. We had about over 50 people sign up for it a couple weeks ago to be part of the production. About half of them are online, half of them are in the building. So it's going to be a mixture of those things. I'll show you where we are. Let's see. Let me cut to this here. So here's the NAB map, and this is the central hall. So if I back up a little bit here, if I can go to. I successfully got my mouse into the wrong. Never let your mouse connect to a iPad. Anyway, so all right. So so this is Central Hall. Central Hall is one of 3 halls. In fact, if I back up here, you'll be able to see all of them here. So this is how NAB is set up here. So you have the West Hall, otherwise known as Siberia. So it is walking over to the West Hall. It's so far away. So
it's
anyway,
really pretty.
So we are going to send a live view over there. So we do want to cover West Hall because there's a lot of really cool companies in radio and like AWS is over there, and there's a bunch of other things. So we're going to send a live view over there to cover it, but they'll be there the whole day. We're going to pick a day where they just get to stay over there so they don't have to go back and forth. But it's a really long. You can walk there, but you don't want to. So anyway, you
got to go across a bridge over the road.
You got to go across the bridge. Talk about going across the rickety bridge and then up the mountain across the rickety bridge and through the dangerous forest. That's what it feels like. So it used to be North Hall here, which we really miss. Anyway, but the West Hall, it's really shiny. So what I will say is the West Hall is the nicest one. It's new, and it's the nicest hall by far. They're slowly upgrading all the halls. That's why this is happening. So the West Hall got built. It's absorbing what used to be in the North Hall. The North Hall, I believe, is under construction. So that's what the process is. But there's a walkway over there, and so anyway, that's there. The South Hall is where the lower South Hall is really where a lot of really big companies that we work with are. And so, but it's very, very competitive to get space there. And so and it's also very complex from how the hall is laid out. It's really hard. But usually when you see a picture of NAB, you see it of the South Hall. That's where Blackmagic has a booth that's like half of the South Hall when you walk in. And so there's a giant Blackmagic booth. And then right next to the Blackmagic, the other half of the front part of that is usually there's Ross is usually up there at Grass Valley. So when you walk in, you see Ross, Grass Valley, Blackmagic, and we'll take pictures and show you more of that when we're there. We chose to really push for, now the creator, by the way, the creator booth, the creator lounge or whatever is going to be in the upper part of the South Hall. And so, it's a little bit calmer there, and there's going to be a lot of great talks and everything else that's there. I may go over there to talk in one of the events there, but they're going to have a lot of talks around creators over in the upper South Hall. The Central Hall is where we and the reason is the Central Hall is as close to Cinegear as we can get. so it's got lots of things, like a lot of other things have screens. But we really wanted to have things that you can touch, that you can look at, that you can grab onto. And so when we asked for a booth, we pushed for that. Now, when we first got here's Central Hall, and you can see as we zoom in. So you can see the big ones are like Sony's over here, Canon's over here. So you can start to see the kind of thing. Grass Valley has moved over here, I guess. I don't know if that's a second one or that's Grass Valley now. Usually there is somewhere over here is DJI, which is, there's this one DJI rig that I always want to buy. And
they're just north of Area. You're almost on DJI. It's C6116.
Yeah, C61. Yeah. So
it's right about there.
ClearCom and a lot of other folks here. So anyway, we are right. I'll zoom in for it, but right there. So that's where we are. And the reason that we're there, and NAB has been super flexible and great with us to allow us to be on the floor, and they were very flexible because they kept on giving us spaces. I was like, but I want to be in the middle, and I didn't need to be in the middle, but they were very flexible with us, and they've been really great to work with, to make this happen. And so we're right here, and this is perfect for us because we think that if we get the proper wireless stuff, which we're working on right now, we should be able to cover most of this in live two-way communication. So that means that if we have a TeraDeck or if we have a VisLink or we have something else, a pair of those that can be zero latency back to our booth. The reason I cut down over here and don't include this part is there's a big room. There's a big set of there's a lot of rebar in that one square, and we found that wireless just stops. So there's a shadow. From our perspective, there's a shadow like this that is unreachable from wireless, just because of that one square there. So anyway, so we see this as, and I'll explain why that's important in a second, but we see this as all low latency video, capable. There is a lot of rebar in here as well. So cell coverage does not work really well here at all, or almost at all, like our live view will die. So then we look at all of this being, available to be managed by the live view. Live view is, of course, lending us a backpack to work with, and we also have Jeff Keithley's is also available. So we'll have two live views that can cover this. And then if we zoom in, you'll see. Look at that! It even has our name on it. So office hours. This is our 10 by 20 booth. And so we're super excited to have it. And I think that we're going to do some pretty innovative coverage, which I'll explain here in just a second. So anyway, so that's where we're at. And again, we think that we can be able to cover a lot of this in low latency. So how the booth is going to be laid out, let's see here. How the booth is going to be laid out here. I'm going to go to full black here for a second. Is so we have this 10 by 20 booth. And essentially what we're doing, and this is the thing that's kind of distinct, is that everybody else is going to be interviewing people. You have someone on the booth with a microphone, or someone walking around with a microphone, and they're going to be, tell me about your product, and and going back and forth and back and forth. And I've done that for 25 years. We're doing something a little bit different. What we're going to be doing is 2/3. There is 20 minutes an hour of that. But 2/3 of the time is going to be spent with panelists in our, that aren't going, actually running the show. So they are the show. So by the way, if you're a panelist and you're watching this, we need a lot of panelists. So anyway, this is going to be a real opportunity. So what we have here is, we'll go back to this. We're planning to put the camera, right now we're planning to put a desk right here. So it's going to be a square desk here with the person that can sit here. This person is a guest. So that is a guest there. We're not going to have two people sitting at that booth. It's going to be the person that we're interviewing because it's the panel that's interviewing. And so then we're going to have a screen here. So there's your screen. And this screen will either be somewhere between a 65 and 85-inch screen. We are in discussions about getting an LED wall. I don't know if that's going to happen yet or not, but we're working on it. We're very close. In fact, we have an LED wall. I just need to get the truss. We've been promised an LED wall that is a 10-foot wide LED wall that we could put in there. And I just have to figure out the mounting and the controllers, and I also have to figure out the power and everything else to the booth, which I'm working on today and Monday. So we have, so there's a potential for a large LED wall, but otherwise it'll be a 65 to 85-inch screen. And so it'll be here. And then what we're doing is we're going to put a camera. The camera is going to be, right here, and it's going to be right in front of the screen. Now you may say, well, then our panelists are going to get hidden by the camera, except that we're working on getting a pretty beefy PC that's going to run, we're looking at being able to run use some version of Unreal Engine to basically move the panelists around. So what that's going to allow us to do is, if you think about it, here, it allows us to have a camera that's here, and we're going to be able to put the panelists around the camera. So the panelists are going to be able to be moved, reformatted. So it won't be this straight grid that we have here. We're going to be able to move the panelists around to get them into the right place. And so there's a variety of ways of doing that in Unreal. We may be using some really cool stuff. We may be using stuff that we've used before, but we're going to be putting panelists. The Unreal solution of some sort has been used in the last 4 or 5 years. So we're going to take advantage of that there. We'll talk more about that as that progresses. Anyway, so you have people here talking, but they're talking to the person, so they can bring whatever they want to show, put it on the table, and they'll be talking to the panelists. Now behind this, we're also going to have, it's a 10 by 20 booth. We're going to have a high table where we can hand out cards and, all kinds of fun stuff there. And then we're going to have a 6-foot table here, another 6-foot table here. And this is going to be where our crew, who's doing a lot of different things, can be loading things, working on things. So there's a lot of other things that are happening that we have to manage there. And we're still, as we get closer to the show, we'll be able to show, we're going to have another final update of NAB on the 4th of April. So we'll show you all the last little bits of what's happening here. But we're a month out right now, and this is where we're at the moment. And so we will have, people will be able to upload things. We have a 50 by 50 connection, and so we have we would like to thank Zoom for that. So Zoom is our bandwidth sponsor, and so they've been able to make that happen for us, and that's not a trivial problem to solve. And so 50 by 50 on the floor changes everything for us. It changes all the things that are possible, because now we can upload and download things. But more importantly, we're going to have a camera here, but we're working on having a high camera here, and high and wide camera that can look out at the rest of the area, and then possibly one more kind of over the shoulder camera that we may put in there. So there's 4 cameras. Those are all going back to a Zoom room. So we'll have a Mac Mini with a Zoom room. So that all these feeds will go back independently. So it's one audio, but 4 different camera feeds go back to Detroit. So that's where the main system is. That way, all of that, there's very little going on the booth. The booth is really just grabbing those camera signals, returning the Zoom meeting back. So we'll have obviously an IFB for the person that's working there. But those will handle that. We're going to have another Zoom room. It might be just a Zoom 1 input, but if we have 2 inputs, we're going to have another Zoom room. And that Zoom room is to go back to this. So we can actually have this a little thicker. again, I told you we could cover this area here, right, roughly. So what we're working on is a two-way camera system, and we've built these in the past where we basically have, if you think about it, we have a camera, and it transmits back to a receiver that will be tied into Zoom. The screen from Zoom, so we'll be using most likely Zoom ISO to pass that back out. We'll be passing a signal back to the camera. The camera will have a little screen below it and a little speaker. We did this 12 years ago for Zoom, so there's not a lot. I mean, not Zoom, for Google. And this will be either shoulder mounted or the ability to do tripod to make that actually happen. So this means that our panel can actually, sorry about that. Hold on. The panel will actually be able to talk to people. So we're taking a card from what Guy did with the Ivy, and we still want to include the Ivy, by the way. We're trying to figure that out right now. But but to have this camera that can just kind of roam around, and we can literally walk up to someone with a shoulder mount and start talking to them, and the panel can start talking to them and having a two-way conversation with them. So we're working on that rig right now to make that work. And so that is both the interviews at the booth and that wireless are, we think, pretty innovative as far as, no one's done something where we take the online panel and bring it in. And again, if you're watching, you're going to be able to do all this. You're going to be able to ask questions for all of these things in Mukana. So you'll be able to ask questions with either the QR code or with Mukana. So the audience is going to be able to do it. Now we're going to schedule. We're in the process right now of scheduling all the folks at the booth. We're going to have we'll have 80% of that scheduled before the show. And we're going to have the ability for you to tag your questions for those folks as we go into it. So you as a viewer will be able to ask the questions ahead of time for Blackmagic or for Sony or for whoever we have sitting at the booth to make those questions. So that's all in process. So we'll have those scheduled, and then we'll have the wireless, and then we'll have the live views. And the mixture of that means we can cover everything fairly effectively. But one of the big things we learned is that we needed rest points for different devices so that we have, this allows us to do a lot more than what we've done in the past as far as how long we're going to go. So really the only limit to how long we go is really has more to do with how many panelists we have than anything else. So panelists, coming in online is the real driver for us as far as that schedule. So we're working on that schedule as well. Now we're broadcasting for 4 days. So in the past we broadcasted a day for a couple hours or 2 days for a couple hours. In this case, we're broadcasting a minimum of 3 hours a day, and it may be considerably more. So that is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Sunday will probably be a shorter day as we get kind of set up. So we'll be setting up a lot of the gear and everything else and testing it on Saturday. Sunday we'll be broadcasting. And again, it'd probably be 2 or 3 hours. It could be longer. It just depends on our schedule and the teams. Right now, with the teams that we have at least 8 people on the ground in every time slot that we need. So we definitely have the people to do this now, which is exciting. The way that the time is going to work from the time we start broadcasting to the end there is, if you look at this here, if you think of a time clock, essentially this first 20 minutes is going to be this is the booth. So we're going to be coming from the booth, and that way we can schedule new people at the top of every hour. So the top of every hour, we've got a new, and this is what we're scheduling ahead of time to make sure that actually works. The second the second piece here, this is the wireless. So from the booth, we'll finish the booth, and then we just literally throw out to the wireless. There's zero latency. I mean, not zero latency, but a frame or two of latency, because it's still a Zoom connection that is being supported by 2 wireless, to and froms that are there. So there'll be someone in this. Again, if we think about the central hall here, I know this is over top of it, but the wireless will be, we can have anywhere in the central hall to do that wireless. So we'll throw to them. So that's still going to be, and again, our panelists will be still running the show there. So it's really a camera out there talking to other people, and we'll see how this works. we'll see. So this is going to be exciting. So we're kind of working on that rig there, but the panelists should be able to talk to them. I am going to have a speaker there. I'm also working on having an IFB with a lot of different tips to it so that we can just hand them to someone and say, hey, throw this in your pocket and put this in your ear, and you'll be able to hear them clearly. So we want to be able to use the speaker, but I also want to be able to just hand someone an in-ear depending on how loud things are. And then the last bit here, so this last section here is the live view. And what that means is that we can get out to anyone. So we can, so now we can go anywhere in Vegas, or anywhere in the world if we want to, but most importantly, anywhere in the north and south, or the west and south halls, the places in the central hall that the wireless won't reach. That's all going to be there. Now that one is going to be the big rig where it has 5.1. It's going to be doing HDR. It's going to be pushing a little bit harder, as far as how it does the output there. So, and I have there's a potential that we'll deliver all of these things at HDR 5.1, but because we have enough bandwidth, we may try to do something a little bit more aggressive. So we'll see. I have to do a little work on my end to figure that out. And it just came up yesterday I was talking to a tech partner, and we were like, we could pass HDR back to, there's a way that we could potentially pass HDR back to Detroit, and be able to grab that in a couple different places. So we'll see how that works. We may do that for one day. Anyway, so we have this live view here. And so what this means is that it also does a couple different things. So one of the things is that when we break this down, now we have this time all the way around to get the booth reset. So we can tell people, hey, we need you to show up for your booth thing half an hour early, then they'll be late, and then we'll call them and get them to show up, and then they'll actually show up here. At 10, hopefully none of our vendors are actually watching this right now to realize that we know that they're going to be late. But we're going to say, hey, where are you? What's going on? And so then they'll show up over here. And then that gives us time to get the booth set up. It also means that the live view has plenty of time to get to wherever it needs to go, to sit down, make sure the batteries are working, make sure everything's all tested, make sure that we're ready to go. The wireless is, again, coming right out of the booth, and then we'll throw it. Now, the thing about the live view is that it's going to be thrown to the live view, and that is the one place that we have the traditional hosts, doing what they're doing. So the traditional host will just be talking to people there, wandering around, doing what we've done in the past. You'll still be able to ask questions via Makana, but there won't be any interaction with the panel gets 2/3 of the hour, and the local hosts get 1/3 of the hour. What that does is it allows the panel to switch anybody in and out. It allows them to take a break and research for the next, the next table and the next other things that we're doing. It kind of rests all the zero latency stuff at the booth. So anything we need to change or fix or whatever, we're not trying to. The hardest part with these broadcasts is trying to fix the train while it's running. So we're going to basically then have this coverage here. So the live view will take us out somewhere and let us look at those things. And so this is kind of from the time we start going live. This is what we're looking at now. What we're looking at right now is, and again, these are tentative. We're still working on the times, but on Sunday, if we think about it like this, it'll be like this is the days. So Sunday is going to be what the tentative times is 12 to 3, and it could potentially go longer. We're just taking a look at what we have available to us, but we want to kind of start small so we have time to recover and make changes and do whatever else we need to do. Tentatively, we're looking at 11 to 4 on these 2 days. We, again, could go a little longer if we feel like it's working. So we could go to add another hour on the end. We could add up to 2 hours on the end if we wanted to. So these are out here. We probably won't, but we could as far as the broadcast goes. And then here we're probably looking at 12 to 2. It might be as early as 11 to 1, somewhere like that. But it's a relatively short window on Wednesday because that's usually a pretty slow day. But it'll be a lot of wrap up and so on and so forth. And so the time that's happening before here, we are looking at using something, in the areas that are before and after this, we're looking at doing more after hours work. So that'll be the Ivy wandering around, other people jumping in with their phones. So there'll be other things that we're doing for the office hours in the other times. So it should be, I think that there was something really valuable about having after hours where people just have open windows and they can sit there and talk and they can look at things and ask for us to go places and so on and so forth. So we're kind of balancing the interest in broadcast with the interest in more of the interactivity for the current members as well. We think that that's probably some of the most interactive, or it's one of the more aggressive coverages of any conference that we've seen so far. And I just want to, before we jump into the questions, really underline that this all stands on top of incredible work that's been done over the last 2 years. That started at NAB 2 years ago, and just incredible work of showing what was possible and figuring those things out. And we'll see. I don't expect this to go smoothly. Just so you know, like we are deep into nobody's ever done this before. More than I would do for. I would never charge a client for what we're about to try because I'd be too afraid that I'd have to refund the money. So I want to make sure that we're clear that like we're taking a lot of chances. We're doing a lot of crazy things. We're still, we're more ahead of this than we've ever been for anything, I think. But there's still a lot of little bits and pieces for us to wind in. So I don't expect everything to work, but I do expect we're going to learn a lot, and I do think we're getting closer and closer to the redefining how you cover these events. In addition to this, by the way, that's just the live. We're going to have people. We have people offsite ready to do edits. So we're going to be doing shorts. We're going to be doing little segments. We're going to be doing, so you'll see a lot of other things. There'll be a whole shelf that is NAB on our YouTube channel. But it is, so there'll be a lot of other content that's coming out that we're covering and showing people. This is just the live part. But we have, again, it looks like we'll have a solid 15 to 20 people on the ground and a solid 10 to 20 people in the cloud, kind of working on this program. So we're pretty excited. Let's go ahead and go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's a way I'd like to volunteer as a remote panelist. I didn't know where that sign up list is, but anyway, to cover the RF hole in the central hall. Have you thought about perhaps a TerraDeck relay with a transmitter on the corner of where the food court, the four food places are on one corner, and a receiver on one corner for the TerraDecks and another transmitter to get back to the booth, so that we could hop over the shadow of the food court in the middle? Because I'd hate to lose Sony's coverage of that wonderful crystal LED screen and all the B&H products, which are over there in the shadow.
Well, and again, from a coverage perspective, I know you have the live views, but yeah, the live view will let us get to anywhere, so we can cover those locations. It's just that whether we can cover them in low latency. We will look at it depends on, what partner comes in for wireless. We got to talk to some folks about wireless, and I'm in discussions about that right now. As far as what assets do we have to work with?
I think is there in the central hall, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the person that I work with at TerraDeck is no longer at TerraDeck, so it makes it hard. Everything gets deeper. Yeah, so it's a harder conversation now to have than it was before, but it's not impossible. The other thing is that we're already doing. I will say that we're already doing more than I've ever done covering an event with more people and more complexity than I've seen almost anybody do at an event. And my tendency is to look at. I have a tendency to pull my elbows in. So I feel like I can cover those things with the live view. I can prove that the wireless works. I can prove that the booth works, and then I'm looking at next year or the next event. I'm hoping that we have enough clean show that we can use it as a demo. So then we can, because Cinegear is not too far away, and I want to get a booth for that. Cinegear doesn't help us nearly as much because it's so broken up. We won't be able to the booth won't buy us nearly as much at Cinegear as it does at NAB. We also have the same kind of challenges at IBC, but we would be able to. We could potentially have a really great job at SIGGRAPH because it's a relatively small booth. We could cover the whole thing with low latency, and so it just really depends. But we want to prove what we're doing. I am very clear that I'm not going to. If it was my goal, is to put low latency wireless in most of the halls. have live view, take the live view out and show you like the parties and the bigger things, like get out of the hall with the live view and really go crazy. But that's a year or two away, and I think that I'm also managing, how many things we can do while we're getting set up, and so a relay, is a set of variables that would make it potentially much more complicated. It seems simple, like everything seems simple, like, oh, it'll be easy and simple. And then you just end up with, someone put some trust in the wrong place and now you can't get there. And suddenly you lose 4 hours trying to fix it. And I'm not sure we have the capacity to do that just yet. Go ahead, Jason.
This just needs to be restated. Traditionally, broadcast is like looking at a play, right? You sit there and, the play changes. The panel, the people that are not there, are actually going to be directly looking at the people that we are bringing in. So, if we're on site, unless I have this wrong, like we are kind of the facilitators, but the panel that is, coming in remotely is kind of very, very much in charge.
This is very much a panel show. Like this is, it is in the past, I feel like the panel felt a little like they were kind of glopping on, like we're all there, we're doing our thing. The panel was on the outside looking in with everybody else. This concept, if we're successful at it, really puts the panel in the center of what we're doing. And the live view is really giving them a break, and to make that actually work. And by the way, we're going to continue to use the electrosonics for for all the wireless, and we've got all those bits and pieces all back in place as well. But yeah, the panel is going to be very much front and center in the whole process, and we want to make that even more intense. Like we want to find how do we keep on making it more and more something up to the panel. I'd love to have things where the different panelists, we pair panelists up with people on the ground where like Guy, if Guy was, I think Guy's going to be on the ground, but if he's not, I'm going to try to persuade Guy to stay at home so that we have him in the panel. so anyway, because I really need folks like Guy in the panel. So for the panelists who are not coming in, what I want to do eventually is pair them up so that they have their own little 20 minutes at a time where they're wandering around just talking to somebody as they go. It was something that Nick and I were talking about doing for GDC. We may try to do it for a little bit of time where I walk around GDC and you hear Nick and I talking to each other about GDC and wandering around. So I think that there's an interesting kind of personal thing that we could do in some of the outer hours with the panelists. But I think that we'll keep on working on that. Again, we're going to experiment a lot, but I also in what I call the broadcast window, which is like the 11 to 3 or 11 to 4 or whatever, we're going to do the best we can to produce a really solid show. Not a crazy show, but just a solid, like it goes from here to here and here, here to here to here to here. And I'm hoping that by Wednesday we have it figured out. So for Sunday they'll be like, we didn't quite get to the person. But the goal is to do, and again, the reason that we're doing so many hours, if we can get the panelists to do it from anywhere in the world, if you're a panelist, if you're watching, is that there's some of this is just practice. Like it's going to be grueling to do some of this stuff, but if we don't, if we only do 2 hours of it, we won't know what we can do. We're going to have to, and we have to be willing to fail a little bit to figure this out. We're really building an entirely new format. Go ahead, CJ.
It really harkens back to the earlier questions in the hour where we were talking about how to make a really good hybrid event, or how to, the physical event versus a remote event. This is a show that's designed for the remote audience, and really it hasn't been done this way. So it's pretty remarkable. Sorry, go ahead.
I will say, and I'll get back to you in a second. I will say that expos are a real reason to have a live stream, because if we can figure out a way to take the online audience, it's the thing about it is that all these, and this is why I'm so excited about covering expos. And I don't, for me, almost all the sessions could be done online. like that could all be done. That's all online. They'd probably be better online. But the expo is, as a media producer, I go to one place, Vegas, for 4 days, and I've got, millions, potentially billions of dollars worth of gear that are all sitting there for me to go and take video of. So an expo is very, very valuable for the online audience as well. Like, to be able to show them if we can get really effective about doing this. Again, when I think 5 years out from here, I'm not thinking about how do we do 10 hours of streaming a day, like from the very time it opens to late. Or I'm thinking about how do we do it, how do we have 5 channels? Like there's an audio channel, there's the gear channel, there's the video channel, there's the transmission channel, and it basically just focuses. The goal is that you as a user or a viewer somewhere in the world could see every single thing that you were interested in that area. And there's a discussion about all of those things that are going on. And we really dig into, each one of these verticals. So that's where I want to be 5 years from now. This is what started with a couple people just kind of trying to figure this out. And this is the first big step in that, building on all the stuff that's happened over the last 2 years. This is a big step towards this idea. This is one channel, not the whole day. Next year, our goal is one channel, whole day, from the time the expo starts to the time it ends. We're covering it. We may even cover some of the parties. We may cover, a couple other things that are there. The year after that, our goal is to start splitting channels. It might be an audio and a video channel or whatever. But 3-4 years from now, the idea is that we have many channels, and we've got and again, this year for one channel, we've got almost 50 people that have signed up. To do 2 channels, we really need 75 to 100 or 100 or 150, something like that. It's going to be a lot of. But it'll produce, but when we go to a conference, it'll produce this massive amount of content for the online audience that really has them feel like they're there. Yeah, you were going to say something, CJ?
I was just going to ask, you had sketched out the layout of the booth and how we're going to do the camera shots. The one thing I didn't understand is where are the walls versus where is the hustle and bustle of the rest of the show?
Yeah, I mean, we're not in a place that is that visible. So if we look at this here, let me get my over here and zoom in. So the reason that when you saw me do it at an angle is that we're going to try to get kind of something at an angle here. It's bad.
So we're kind of opposite the stairwell.
Yeah. So if we put the person right here, it would just go straight into the, concrete, so I don't think that there's a lot to see there. So the idea is if we do it at a slight angle, you at least see some, you're going to see a little bit of the background, and it looks like there's people walking by and there's some booths over there. To do that. There's pipe and drape, I'm guessing, on those sides.
Yeah.
Now we could do it here, but we would just be showing a lot of Belden. so changing the angle a little bit will just, and Belden's not, if Belden, by the way, if you're watching Belden, if you sponsor our booth and give us a little extra money, we will turn it 90 degrees, and it'll just be Belden in the background. I'm just
give us
flat
cables.
Out,
They've got great cables.
Just call me, and so we'll put you in the background the whole time. I don't care. So anyway, so but that's why we're kind of angling it a little bit this way. And again, it's from a visual perspective.
Pipe and curtains of those other 2 booths, One Technology and Legend. So we're just looking at the back of those booths. So we're
not going to. I think. Yeah. Oh, this one will be the back.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it will or not.
Well, maybe. Yeah, I guess they would be facing that main aisle.
I know I would do it this way. I would go this way if I were them, but I don't know if they will, because it would. Yeah, anyways, less competition. It'd be a quieter experience for them. But if it's the back, we'll see what they put up there. At least it just has something in depth, at an angle. So there'll be some vanishing points and some things to work on there. And again, we're just happy to be there. So we're, we're happy to have what we have there. And so we'll keep on playing with it.
A lot of exhibitors at NAB have no curtains at all. They just have the pad, and I've seen more booths than I can tell you that they're just open on all 4 sides. So that's a possibility. We don't know.
Yeah, so we'll see. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, Sky Gleason isn't here, so I just want to reiterate what he would say. And what would Sky say?
We're telling a story.
Story. So what is our story, and how do we bring people along on this venture? Because we're crafting it's something new, and we want to put some guardrails in place. But I like what you've done in the past, Alex, where you've just, at the end of the show last year, you just took everybody on. And that's more what I was doing with the Ivy Cart at CES. And it's just a different train of thought rather than just sit down, because there's this company, Rave Pubs, that goes and hits like every booth. They send out like college kids, college grads, and they just go out there and they hit every booth and do an interview. And I go through their channel and there's hundreds of videos that only get like 50 views. So I don't want boring stuff where we're just static. Okay, a college kid could have went in there and did this and we could watch it at any time, 24 hours a day.
I agree with you. And I think that potentially if, and again, a lot of this is going to lay on if you're a panelist, you're going to get an email. So don't worry about it. Like we're going to be reaching out to you. But as we schedule the panel, the advantage that we have is the potential of not having college students and not just listening to a person interviewing, like, what's your product and how do you do this and da-da-da-da. But it's really people asking questions about that booth at every moment. So the hosts that are on the ground are grabbing things that we know that we're comfortable with. We may have some people in our on the ground. We're talking to some of them that one of the things I'm looking at is even everyone from the person who owns Own I Know Media, Mark, I'm going to give him a segment to wander around on some of the stuff. He's going to be there and like, show me some of the stuff that you think is interesting. Show me some of the stuff that is. So I'm talking to a couple people that are going to be there that can be the guest hosts that are going to take you to something that, hey, this is really cool. This is something I'm interested in. And we've got a lot of really very experienced and very talented people within the group that's going to be on the ground working on this show. And so we're going to grab some of them and have them show us, take that live view for those 20 minutes at a time. And I'm trying to do as little as possible. So I want to be on the back end trying to make sure it all works and make everything, but I'll maybe do 1 or 2 segments a day, with the live view or whatever to tie that back in. And the rest of it, I'm hoping that we're going to fill in with other people that are within our group to show the things that they're excited about. But to your point, these are real conversations. Like, I'm not interested in saying, just show me your product. What did you release today? What did you do? But really ask those questions. And again, how do we get those questions from the online audience to that person instantly? And so we're going to have a really, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the question management team of getting the questions, but basically we're going to be sitting there with our cell phones and looking at Makana and getting the questions rolling in and being able to, really, integrate folks, and integrate them. But I think that the level at which we're including, I think the reason they only get 50 views at a time is because, again, it's a college student and it's just a VOD and it's not, and so I think we're going to have an opportunity to make it much more engaging, or we're going to learn about what worked and didn't work. I mean, this is not going to be the solution. We're going to look back 2 years from now and go, oh, I can't believe we did that. Like that was dumb, and that's, and if we're successful at any point in time, we should always be able to look back 2 years. I call it failing forward. But you're failing forward all the time. And the only time you know that you've made progress is looking back 2 years, looking back a year, looking back at where you were and going, that was amazing that we even survived that, or we even decided we want to do another one. So our goal is to keep on, but we can't get there without experimenting. And this is the biggest experiment that I've ever done at an event. So it's and it can't be done. By the way, it could not be done without all the partners that are coming in to help us, which we'll keep on talking about more. It couldn't be done without all the volunteers that are actually making it available. I mean, how many people cover NAB with 50 people? Like nobody. So anyway, and we couldn't do it if we didn't have a large enough group of people that are willing to put it in, put the time in to do it. And so it's really an incredible, couldn't be done without everyone that's involved. Let's go to the next question.
Next question comes to us from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. And Paul says, NAB has 1,208 exhibiting companies. How do you decide which ones to cover and strategically plan a route for Guy Cochran's media cart if he's bringing it? And how many can you cover?
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I remember, I don't remember which show, but there was a show where there was like a 10-minute period where we were really in a zone. In other words, I was asking questions, other people were asking questions, and there was an awareness of what was around you. I could see you were talking to someone, but then in the background, there was an interesting company that I could spot, because it was on camera. And then you quickly went from one to the other. So I think the key is to get in that zone and stay in that zone.
And that's what's going to happen. I mean, that's what's going to happen in the both the wireless and the live view to some degree. The live view people will still be able to type stuff in. The wireless people will be able to actually we'll start somewhere. So when the wireless gets thrown to from the booth, they'll start it somewhere, but then after that, it's going to wander around. We're just going to wander. There's a lot of. I think that what we learned was that for some of the events, having a set place that someone's going to come show us something is valuable, and that's why the booth is there and it has a value to it. Having the ability to just wander around is also valuable, and so we're going to do that. And again, there's going to be after hours stuff where you really are just wandering around. So I think that we're doing. I will say that again. I'm going to try to persuade Guy to be in the panel and not be at NAB, but I don't know if he's going to be willing to do that or not. So anyway, we'll see.
I'm trying to figure it out still, but one of the cool things about what we did at CS is these speakers here. They don't look very big, but this is how small. I mean, compared to my head, they're loud. They'll go across a trade show floor that's busy. And then the other thing was that people were able to see other people. So that's the size of the screen next to my head. So it's about the size of a head. So as we're just trying to figure out different ways of running a show, there's just different things that I think made it successful for the CES show was the battery. I didn't have to worry about it. At the end of the day, I was still at 41%, and that was an 8-hour day, and let it go. And we transmitted for 3 to 4 hours, 3 days in a row. And so that's my concern about some of the other systems is when are you going to run out of juice? Because we're not doing this all the time. We're not into the rhythm of having extra packs, to that level.
And for us, we will have a lot of extra packs, and we will have, this is that spelling that I'm doing right now, which is that we're jumping from one mode to another, one whole system to another. And by doing that, it gives the systems time to swap batteries. And, those tables in the booth, a big piece of them are going to be chargers. Like lots of
batteries. Lots of
chargers. There's literally, I'm dedicating like 10 amps, to just the batteries. So that's definitely part of that puzzle. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, is there going to be a on-site anchor somewhere to cover the areas between throws as the camera's moving from one place to the other on the low latency area?
No.
Or are you just going to throw it to a remote panelist, I guess, to discuss what they'd seen before to fill in the time between the moves?
The remote panelists can always fill in time, and we can always, but the goal, we'll see what happens. This may be crazy and we may not work, but the goal is really to, to set it up where the panelists are actually asking the questions in that wireless system. Now, we may have a person that's on site that could, especially in the first couple of days, because it's so foreign. We may have someone who is a co-host with the panel,
vamp or something.
That can when we throw it like, "Hey, we're here," and kind of set up the conversation, and then have what we want to do is have that person. The key is anybody who hosts and I'll probably host it a couple times. When we host that low latency wireless, we're going to throw it to a person and go, "Hey, we're here at the Canon booth or the Sony booth or at ClearCom or whatever. We're really excited to have them." And the goal is for the person who does that open that captures that is to slowly step away, like just get it off the ground, land the thing, and then have the panel. If we're successful, the panel's just going to be able to ask questions of somebody that's here. So we'll use a person on the ground as a crutch until we can figure out a way to really just throw it to someone and say, "You're live." Like, "Hi, everybody. We're here." I don't know if how many people at a booth will be ready for that yet. So we're going to have a person there to say, "Hey, everybody, we're here. I'm here with Jay at ClearCom, and we're going to, they've got this new cloud thing that they're working on." And we kind of, and then let the panelists start to ask questions. And then kind of, again, the person who's there is really, then what we want to do is have them get out of camera, get away from the thing, and let the panelists take over. And it's just a matter of creating a comfort. So to your point, we might have someone there. I don't think the vamping will be done by the panel, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of vamping because you're going to have.
Will that be managed by a remote remote panelist manager? In other words, using Makana to line up questions from the panel so that they can go in order, so it's not a free for all.
Yeah, the panelist will be able to. Yeah, we'll still be using the panel view, so there'll be a section there where the panel can put it up, and we have a host that
panelists can raise their hand.
You've got a question, Guy, for ClearCom or to Jason or whatever. So we'll still be using all the tools that we already use now to organize the panel to into how they're going to ask questions, and then of course the goal is the panel is asking questions, but we're also having remote viewers putting stuff into Makana, having those pop up. And so the host will be going, "Hey, we've got another question from folks online," or "We've got a QR question," all the things we do every day. The goal is to step as little away from our standard production process as possible to make sure that we can, and so the panel will know, where they're going, be able to raise their hand against that. Again, what we'll have is, imagine in Mukana, you'll have a section that is, this is the top of the hour, but there's another section is we're going to throw to this, and again, the remote stuff is going to be the low latency, and the live view are going to be scheduled typically a couple days or one day before. They're not going to be, or sometimes the same day. The booth is going to be hard scheduled so that we can, so that we just know where we're going to go, because that takes a little bit more setup. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so for the Cinegear and for IBC even, I used to do a little bit of that. And so the key for me was that I had an IFB in my ear, and Raj and whoever else was kind of the key between the back end and the booth, was letting me know we need this to happen next. And I was kind of throwing it there. I think this is what we're hoping to get out into the panelists and the live panel there, and make them more that central pivot point than I was for the other ones. I'll be there and some other people will be there. So if everything falls apart, you could stand in and do that booth vamping for a little bit. Like if we lose
something there or something, and I'm,
we'll be ready for that.
There'll be a little bit of a crutch. Our goal is to get to a point where that doesn't have to happen. But I think that the first time, one of us is going to be around to make sure that we
just
can hold
in
the ground
case.
if it's necessary. Yeah, absolutely. And again, a high and wide of the thing, and we'll have some time lapses and some other things that are shot there.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that they'll worst case scenario is there'll be 2 minutes of time lapses or of some high and wide shots or some random, things there. People will stick around to see what happens. So we will have some crutches that we can jump to if we need to, some little pull the ripcord kind of stuff.
And no one's ever thought this time lapse is taking forever. I hate this. They're
exactly.
hypnotic. They're beautiful.
We'll do it.
We could put an Insta360 on a pole and stick it up about 20 feet, and then just give control of it to the panelists.
You missed that conversation in the meeting, Courtney.
We're going to have that. That's going to be an after hours. So in after hours, you'll have a PTZ that you can, probably a couple PTZs that you can just grab and move around. So that Brendan is bringing one hole dedicated at Mac Mini with the cameras and stuff like that, so that you'll be able to move things around. I'll have some cameras there too. You'll be able to move around and look at stuff there. And the goal will be someday to have more of that, and we might be able to cut to that as well. We'll see what the system can handle, but it should be fun. Let's go to the next question. We're going to run out of time.
Yeah, Ronnie Hofsway in Tromsø, Norway is up next. What switcher setup will be used at the office hours booth?
Current plan is none. We're going to feed all the camera feeds into a Mac Mini and send them back to Detroit. So the current plan is that it's a Zoom room. We'll have a switcher in the back as a backup. So we'll have probably an SDI and an HDMI blackmagic switcher laying around if we need to. But right now the goal is that we're going to plumb all that. We have enough bandwidth. We're just going to plumb all the stuff from a Zoom room back to Detroit, and so that's cut by the TD that's running office hours, not by us on the booth. So we're trying to minimize the complexity at the thing. We will have a backup there. So if something goes wrong, we'll do that. We are looking at potentially using Boink's their NDI thing as a little podcasting thing at the end of the show, but we'll see if that works. So we are looking at having a separate show that we do. A couple of us sit around and talk about the stuff at the very end. So we'll see how that goes, but we're not, maybe talk about, it might be like a little insider show that we do. So stay tuned for that too. Next question.
Next one comes from Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota. Are all the panelists folks that have already volunteered for the event, or to include people that have not?
Courtney, are you set up?
I was trying to find out where the sign up is, but I heard somebody say the other day, well, we have everyone we need for NAB, so
we have everyone we need for the production of NAB. We're going to be reaching out to the panelists
so
over
you
the next
haven't
week.
set the remote panelists.
No. The remote panelists, if you're interested, stay tuned. The email is going to go out early next week, and we're going to be looking to fill all the slots for the remote panelists at that point. So
hey, Alex, how big a grid do you want? Do you want to try to push to fill 16 or 8?
No, 6 to 8. 6 to 8 is what we're hoping to do, is have 6 to 8 panelists. I don't think we need any more than that. Next question.
Next question comes from Roberto Barra in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. Is there a way to sit in on the planning meetings even if I'm not able to attend live?
We can look at that as we get a little closer. Usually, oftentimes, we've had trouble with that in the past because people sit in and they can't help but suddenly have a lot of opinions about it, and it kind of sidetracks our system. And so we tend not to do that. But what we are going to do is be constantly talking about the meeting and talking about the stuff. So we're going to, April 4th, we're going to do another meeting. I think it's April 4th. We'll do another one where we tell you how we're, like these are the last updates before we get to the show. And then the Friday at the end of the show, we're going to do a breakdown to talk about how we did it. But the best way to learn this is to volunteer and take part in it, and then join all the meetings. So anyway, so when you see these announcements, that's the best way to do it. But to be an active member. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, what are our backup plans for dealing with comms issues and system failures?
We have a panel that can vamp, so we have people that know how to talk to each other. So there's a little bit of that. We're going to have some time lapses that can play out. We're going to have some wide shots that can play out. So there's a couple different places to jump if we have, some major issues there. We're going to have a couple different people on different phones and so on, different services. So that often helps as well. I'm going to have, for my comms, I'll have both AT&T and Verizon with me. So if something starts to go sideways, I can kind of switch my phones. Next question.
Next question comes from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana, and he asks, what's the story that Office Hours wants to tell at NAB?
We kind of touched on this one, so let's go relatively quickly through this. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, my 2 cents worth is, hey, you always wanted to go to NAB? Come here. We'll show you exactly what it's like. We'll show you that plus so much more that you weren't expecting.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, if you get in the zone, like I was talking about, the story will evolve as you develop themes at the show.
It's we just want to, I think that if I would say that there's one thing that we want to do is the word that I would think of as explore. We're going to explore ways to do this. We're going to explore the expo. We're going to, and I think that a lot of you are going to watch this and then suddenly realize that you really want to go to NAB some year, because we're not going to be able to reproduce how amazing going to NAB is. I've been going to NAB almost every year since 1995. So this will be my 30th year next year. And so I think that it's it's my favorite. It's if there's one conference I go to every year, it's NAB. And so I think that it's we want to have people explore, be inspired, wonder. Those are the kind of things that I think about when you see those things, when you think about them. Next question.
Chris Fenwick in Emeryville, California. Perhaps we should create roll-ins thanking our sponsors that can be overlaid with audio VO read while the portable cameras are wandering between booths and between segments.
We'll definitely have lower thirds and graphics. I tend not to do a lot of full screen or roll-ins. I don't do commercials, and I'm not promising that to anyone that's supporting us. But we will be doing lots of mentions and talking about how we're using their products. And I mean, almost all of them that we're talking to right now. We'll see how it lands. We'll be talking about them, but we will definitely be thanking them on the show. I prefer reads over videos in general. So we'll definitely be thanking folks that have been gracious enough to loan us equipment. Some people underwriting some of the stuff that we're doing. We'll talk more about that in more detail as we get closer to the show. Next question.
Guy Cochran from Seattle, and here on the panel, would a powerful Wi-Fi like Airfiber make sense? And he's got a link to the Airfiber system.
I used to own an Airfiber, pretty big one, and I don't know if it would make sense for what we're doing here. I don't know how we would necessarily use that connection. I think it would be it. They're actually pretty tweaky and complicated to work with. They're not super easy to set up. And again, I'm a little conscious of time. There are places where we may end up using Airfiber in the future. They are wondrous little machines. Like you have especially full duplex ones that have both. They'll go up to 10 miles, or 12 miles technically. I've never done more than 10 miles on a 1 gig connection. As long as there's line of sight, and the line of sight is
perfect,
super delicate. Yeah, so super really line of sight, plus or minus 2 degrees, I think typically. Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I was just curious as to how tight that had to be, because if we did have the cart and we did have somebody pointing it, if there's dead spots like we were talking about over there by Panasonic where we could just beam right over there, and now all of a sudden we've got double redundancy.
I mean, my backup right now is that we have 2 live views that can wander to any place, anywhere in the area. So I'm not. There's always a temptation to try to make everything perfect or make everything be exactly what we want, and I'm kind of laying some lines of like we're just not going to make that work right now. And I'm not going to, because I have we're doing so many new things that I will admit that I'm not even trying to go any further than what we do. I think we've got a great solution for low latency wireless. I think we've got a great solution for the live views, and I think we've got a great solution on the booth. We're definitely going to leave this show wanting to do other things or more things or other, whatever. But there's always a temptation to keep adding things, and we're kind of we told everybody in the last meeting last night, it was like we're the end of adding things. so like we're a month out. We're just trying to close all the little things that we've decided to do for this one, and then. But I think that, Cinegear is really complicated. I don't know. We're going to I kind of look at it like it's the coolest one that we do because of all the eye candy, but the hardest one on so many levels that there's so much wireless going on there. There's so much sun. And so anyway, I don't know how much we'll innovate there, but SIGGRAPH will be the next big one that we try to do some push the envelope in Denver of all places. Next question.
Ronnie Hofsøy Tromsø, Norway is back with how will the wireless return feed audio be handled in regarding delay and echo cancellation since we'll be using a speaker? Just a really good mic?
In the past, we found that echo cancellation, because the latency is low enough, will work, but we'll find out. And I'm planning to have an IFB. They're going to be using. We will have them using an SM58. So there's a lot of off-axis rejection already. And then we are going to have an IFB available with the wireless pack so that we can have them just put something in their ear. And then we're also going to then try to do the open speaker. And if the open speaker works, it's magical to do it that way. And we've done it successfully that way in the past. 12 years ago. So it's not even new stuff for us. So I think it'll work, but we'll know soon. I'm trying to get the whole rig up by GDC next week. I'm not sure if it'll be totally done, but we're working on it to try to get it to test. Next question.
Chris Fenwick in Emeryville, California. We need a roll-in Alex level slideshow in VO explaining how it's all wired in 60 seconds to roll on occasion during the slower moments or when we need fill.
I think that I'm definitely going to do a video about how I was trying to get more graphics done for today, and just my schedule's been a little hectic this week, and I couldn't figure out this one part. That little thing with the circles of doing that in Keynote is like a skill I don't have. I have a lot of skills in Keynote, but doing rotating time things. So I'll be an expert by Monday. I got beaten last night on it, and I was like, I don't like being beaten very often. So there's a whole lot of research that's going into like best ways to display time things. I'm going to try to figure out. So I am going to do something that's like 60 seconds, but we're going to probably put it as a VOD. As an emergency, I'm going to use things that are more event driven. So what we're going to do is grab a bunch of clips. Number one is time lapses, which I love, and we're probably going to press some of our volunteers into being the time lapse crew that will just go get lots of time lapses of all over NAB, which is useful for next year as well for us. As far as PR and promotion and everything else, NAB might even want them, but we'll shoot a bunch of time lapse of that. We will also so time lapse is just live feeds, or not even live feeds, record feeds that feel live. These are, we'll let you guys see a little bit of behind the scenes, which is that we'll record a bunch of things that look live, and we can cut to it and say coming up next, and you'll have like a little graphic, and you'll have a live video of people walking through between Central Hall and North Hall or whatever, and that doesn't have to be live. So we'll have a lot of that. I'm actually thinking about putting up a playout B system to do all of those, to kind of incorporate all the tools that we have access to. Jason, real quick, we're a little over.
Yeah, thanks for volunteering, Fenwick. We'll get you the H2R gear thing, and you can just take care of all of that for us.
Yeah, Fenwick is taking over all, and he's probably going to say, yeah, I'm going to. Anyway, so last question.
Ronnie Hofsøy, Tromsø, Norway. Could we ask all panelists to synchronize colors and background decor to have a homogeneous look during the broadcast? What's our...
I think that we would... I will say that I kind of like, so we went down the path of thinking about gray screens or blue screens or other things for people. I kind of like the variety. So I kind of like the fact that because at this point, everyone's got a pretty good setup. So I kind of like the variety that we see among different people. So I don't know if I like the feel that you're at somebody else's place. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Well, there you go. That gives you a sense of what we're doing at NAB. I'm super excited about it. And I think that it's, and again, I want to thank every team that has done something like this over the last 2 years inside of our group, because we're learning by watching everybody else do it, by having everyone do their own version of this and take on a different way of doing it. And we'll continue to experiment with that. But I think this is this will be a whole series of new failures that we get to do. And we just want to keep on making new mistakes and not old ones. So we're going to make so many new ones this time. But I think that, again, one of the things that's been really important is that we've backed away from trying to do it the way everybody else does it all the time. And I think that what's going to be interesting is if we're successful at all at what we're doing, it's not just that it'll change how we cover events. It'll change how lots of people cover events. You know, like as we get better at this and show different ways of incorporating an online audience, of having these panels, of having those things, you know, basically you'll start to see other people doing this kind of thing, and just know that we explained it to you today. Like this is how we're innovating. That's part of what I think is important about office hours, is innovating new ways of connecting everyone around the world. I mean, we talk about that. Bringing, you know, a global conversation where no one's left out. How do we do that and experiment and show that to everyone so that we excite them into the idea that they should do that too. It's not about us doing all of it. It's about everyone doing it. So the things that work. So anyway, so thank you to the incredible team that's working on NAB. It's really, really great to have. We couldn't do this without all of you. Thanks to everyone asking questions first hour and second hour, keeping this conversation going. Can't do this without you. We also can't do it without the panelists. So we really appreciate everybody's contribution today into the conversation. And of course, the incredible team on the back end that's helping with the hardware, the development, the editing, the planning, the managing, all those things. We can't do this without any of you. So we really appreciate everybody's contribution to the show every day and also into these events. Today we traveled 80,000 miles, 129,000 kilometers, and that is 637 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
Hey, Bill, let's do a hyperlapse where I just, walk around with a Vision Pro on my face and
Hyperlapse will be fun. Yeah.
Cool. And we'll see how many dumb looks we get.
I feel like GDC is the one place I can go and shoot video with my headset. So I'm definitely taking the
without being laughed out of the.
Can we get you in the first car in the monorail?
Make fun of you. That's part of the
fun. Do a hyperlapse to the monorail route to the convention.
We do all those things.
I think we need a string of artificial bananas that run from the corner of our booth to the outside wall of the.
In fact, what we should do is we should run fiber, but we can string the fiber. We should string the fiber through the bananas. So it's like it's the banana route. Yeah, exactly.
These are high bandwidth bananas.
Yeah, it's high bandwidth bananas.
TAC 12 bananas.
If we were looking for a name for the show, that would be it. All right, high bandwidth bananas. All right, thanks. All right, see you.